Hello everyone and welcome back to the Final Chicane with me, Cristinboylan. Hey everyone, we are back in our familiar territory, so hopefully the setup goes alright today. I don't know what happened with the audio last week. It just stopped recording halfway through it. My microphone was fine. Thank God, because I can't afford to buy a new microphone again. So hopefully the audio is back to normal. I actually haven't tested it stupidly enough. Probably should have done that. And we're on to the last race week before the summer break. I always love the summer break, but this summer break, I have like nothing planned. So I'm actually just going to be bored. I need to plan stuff so that like I just love when I have so much on a non-Formula 1 weekend. Because it's so relaxing, because I hate having stuff on a Formula 1 weekend. But still, I'm very much looking forward to the break, and it's needed for us all, fans and drivers included. An exciting enough weekend at the Hungarian Grand Prix, Hungaroring. Do you want to know a fun fact? For years, I called the Hungaroring, like I still like have to think about it before I say it. I used to be like the Hungaroring, and I don't know why. I always just read it as roaring, hunger roaring. So if I accidentally refer to it as that any time, then just forgive me, because I called it that for years without even noticing that I was wrong. What is it? It's the Hungaroring, I think. Hungaroring, which makes sense. Hungaroring does sound cool though. Anyway, it was a good race though. I was a little concerned that the race wasn't really going anywhere, but it did pick up. But before we talk about the race, let's do the Final Chicane brain game. And this week we are doing the riddle of the week. Gotta end on high. Gotta end on the riddle of the week. Okay, so guess who this person is? A long one this week. I race with passion, heart and pride, an Italian star on the Scarlet Ride. In 85, I chased a title dream, wearing red, part of the prancing horse team. From Tyrrell's wings to Ferrari's fame, in speed and grace I made my name. Le Mans would later hear my roar, though F1 fans always wanted more. I flew the tricolour flag with might, a gentleman both off track and in fight. Though my final lap came all too soon, my legacy shines like the Monza moon. So, who is that? Someone that I don't think I've talked about before on my podcast, but I'm going to give you the story on them at the end of today's episode. So speaking of today's episode, let's get into it. A few media moments this week, a few things confirmed on media day, such as Max confirmed that he will be staying with Red Bull for 26. I mean, I think that pretty much confirms the theory, like as soon as Christian's gone, the talk of Max has left. So say what you will, but I think my theory on the situation was right. That being said, and Max saying that, like, in Formula 1, that doesn't really mean much, because these decisions change and happen all the time. So honestly, trust no one in Formula 1, even if that's what they're saying. Do you want me to bring up my PTSD moment when Andrea Seidel, see, why did they do that? They're confusing me now. Said on the Saturday, or was it the Sunday? Said, I think on the Saturday, no, McLaren aren't involved in silly season whatsoever. And then one day later, Daniel got fired. Yes, I'll continue to bring that up every chance I get, because I'm still sour about it. So sour. Speaking of Daniel, like we do in every episode, despite him not being relevant in Formula 1 right now, did you see his Instagram post that Max liked within 2 minutes, I think, by the way? He was on like a wildlife trip. I think I saw in Alaska. I think someone said that. And he posted a picture with the bear. I think it's a real picture. I don't know. I'm guessing it's a real picture because they went to photograph bears. And there's a video, or there's something of someone saying, let's go find some bears to photograph. I saw some people saying, oh, he's like hunting or whatever. But he's not hunting. You could see the only equipment they had with them was cameras. And trust, if he was hunting, I'd be the first person to have something to say about that, even if it's Daniel. I don't support hunting over here, even if it's Daniel Ricciardo doing it. So he wasn't though. So it doesn't matter. He wasn't hunting, he was taking pictures of bears for some reason, and he's got some side quests going on recently. What is he doing? Get away from the bears. He's scared of dogs, and you're telling me that he was mere meters away from a grizzly bear. I don't know. Something isn't adding up. Also, I'm jealous. I would love to be that close to a bear. By choice. Sometimes I say stuff on my podcast, and I'm like, that will hit diff if, like, I got killed by a bear one day, and that clip of me would just be brought up, you know? Like, every time I say something like that, I'm like, if I get killed by a bear one day, and now even that I've said that, now this whole clip would be like, oh my God, she predicted it. I don't know why I think about that all the time. Maybe I should stop. Anyway, other Formula One news. Yuki had some interesting comments to make. He was talking about his performance in comparison to Max, and basically he was like, yeah, well, to be fair, Max is four-time world champion, has been racing in the car for however long, I actually can't remember. And his quote was something along the lines of, let's see if I get exactly the same car. We do know that some updates, like the updates, go to Max first, but there has been weekends where they have the same car, right? Or is he alluding to like getting us to know that they don't have the same car? Because why would they do that? I don't know. There's always talks about difference in cars between teammates, and obviously with the updates there often is difference in cars between teammates. But interesting comment. Obviously I think that spurred a lot of hate for Yuki as well because of his performance, and a whole lot like being the victim and not taking his own responsibility. But I don't know the inner workings of Red Bull, and I don't know what's going on there. So I trust Yuki if that's what he thinks. Not saying that I think that, but I respect his opinion on that. On other news, Felipe Drugovich is apparently in talks with Cadillac. He was also in FP1 this weekend, which I'll talk about a little later. And who else? And Fred Vasseur is spending a little more time around the paddock. He got a multi-year extension, and Ferrari seemed happy with that. The boys seemed quite happy with that. And I think that was the right decision. The last thing Ferrari need right now is just to start changing everything up again. Like, they just need to keep things as they are and fix them as they are. Does that make sense? Like, you can't just keep... Fred is not the problem here. There's other problems, and once we get that sorted, Fred I already think is being a great team principal since he took over, so I'd like to see that continue. Hungary track, always an exciting enough race, even though you just, like, the overtaking isn't the best on the track. You still do see some overtakes, but qualifying is a lot more important because overtakes are a bit less than usual, and because of that, also the undercut is usually a lot more powerful. The alternate strategy, the one stop, did work out. So, but also, like, obviously the undercut is useless if you don't warm up your tires on that lap that you're undercutting your opponent, like we did see with Oscar and Charles today. So there's a lot going on that you have to think about. FP1, we had Alonso out of FP1, not for a rookie exchange for once, actually out with an injury, a muscular injury in his back. So taking over from him was Drugovich, and he was still running the same setup, the same plan as Alonso was going to, so that wasn't a real setback for Aston Martin. Paul Aaron was also in for Hulk in the stake. Alonso, I didn't hear anything about Alonso's injury like throughout the weekend after that. I didn't really see how that back injury could have went away between FP1 and FP2. But I think maybe, he probably could have done FP1, but he chose to just be a bit more cautious and careful and try get that little bit extra rest, I guess. But we can tell by the end of the race weekend that injury did not hold him back at all. FP2, did you see, if you watched FP2, like Martin Brundle was in the helicopter doing his like track talk and looking down on the cars from the helicopter? That was pretty cool. I've never seen them do that before, I don't think. Unless I just wasn't paying attention when they did it before. But I want to do that. Although I don't have great eyesight, I wouldn't be able to see any car. I wouldn't be able to make out anything, but commentary was good this weekend. I really enjoyed the Sky Sports commentary. We also had Jamie Chadwick on for a lot of it, and she's always great. She always has such like a different perspective and like a more unique insight than some of the others. So I always enjoy her on commentary. By FP3, my opinions on it was that it was looking good for McLaren, it was looking okay for Ferrari, it wasn't looking good for Red Bull, and it was actually looking good for Stake, because what were they doing in FP3? And Stake did have a decent weekend actually in the end. We had F2 on this weekend as well, last before the summer break. Obviously keeping an eye on Alex Dunn. Unfortunately not the best weekend for Alex Dunn. He had a bit of a poor qualifying. I think he qualified P9. So for the reverse grid, that was fine because the top 10 are reversed. So he started P2. He finished P2. Yeah, he finished P2. He wasn't happy with Pepe Marti though, and the cool down room was a little awkward. I saw some clips of it on Twitter. It's sort of annoying because on the Saturday, like, they don't really show on Sky the podium or anything for the F2 because they have to cut to Formula 1 next. So where is it that we get those videos? Is it F1 TV? Do F1 TV stick on it, or like, does anyone know? Because I just saw the video on TikTok and I was like, how do people get that? But yeah, Alex and who came third was Crawford. Were like laughing at Pepe Marti's like celebration or something. I didn't really know what was going on, to be honest, but it just felt a little awkward. Quite an intense race though. It was good. And then this morning for the feature race in F2, Alex finished P9 where he started, and he's dropped out of the top 4 of the championship. So, a rough sort of weekend, and we still have the second half of the season to go. I think we're a bit over the second half of the season now in F2, but many races, the championship standings change every race, so he can still come back. I really do enjoy F2 though, and I always get comments on TikTok like, why are you even watching F2? Like, why wouldn't I watch F2? It's motorsport. Only start watching it properly, like proper engaged to every practice session and everything. Well, the practice session and the races, because Alex Dunn was in it and we got to support our Irish, but also alone, like, it's just an exciting series. People have a problem if I watch more than Formula 1, and they also have a problem if I only watched Formula 1. So actually, you just can't win whatsoever. Qualifying, myself and like everyone else basically thought that was going to be a toss-up between Lando and Oscar. My money would have been on Oscar, just about, maybe. Would have lost my money. And if your money was on Lando, you also would have lost your money, and I can't afford to lose any money. Max didn't have a great qualifying session altogether. In Q1, he was only P13 before his last qualifying lap, with actually Alonso on top, which was very nice to see, very hopeful. And then Alonso switched to Piastri, Max to P7, Tsunoda to P9. So Red Bull wasn't really there. But by the end of the session, Yuki unfortunately did get knocked out. P20 we had Albon, 19 Hulk, Ocon, Gasly, and then P16 in Tsunoda. Also, fun fact, which I didn't realise until the commentator said, was that Isaac Hadjar has never been knocked out in Q1. Which I know it's his first season, but that's still really impressive because he's in the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. Visa Cash App or B, I should say. Q2, there was a little worry of rain and a few droplets did fall, but it was actually nothing that affected it at all. You just see, I love it when a qualifying session is about to start and then you see everyone in the crowd put on their jackets and put their umbrellas up, and you're like, this is going to be an exciting one, but it was fine. Obviously, everyone was scrambling to get out early then, and Kimi was first out, so automatically I was like, okay, Kimi is going to be racing on the driest track because it's just going to get wet after that, but actually he had the slowest time out of the first lot. Piastri and Leclerc seemed to be a bit more confident because they did not come out at the same time as everyone else, and that really did not make a difference to them because they're both through. Another thing that would stress me out about Formula 1 that would keep me awake is like when you're all trying to barge out of the pits and no one is letting you through. I get so offended. I always let people through when I'm driving, but again, I'm not driving in a race, so. But like, how embarrassing when you inch forward. Because I know it's embarrassing when you inch forward thinking someone's going to let you out and they don't let you out. in my normal driving, but they were bullying Carlos. No one was letting Carlos out. And by the end of Q2, we even had Hamilton knocked out by Behrman in the end, which, if you saw the post-race or the post-quali interviews, they were so upset. And they always are these days. Kimi's last week, Lewis's this week. It's just so upsetting. And Lewis saying earlier on that he would probably shed a few tears this summer break because, I hate the thought of him sad. I hate the thought of anyone sad. That's why it's hard watching sports when you're an empath, when you're sympathetic. Because now, no matter who wins, I always feel bad for whoever didn't win. It's something that I can work on though. So P15, we had Colapinto out. P14, Sainz out, Hamilton, Behrman and Antonelli out. On to Q3. Who did I say looks good? Oh, Aston Martin. Aston Martin looks good. I was right about that. They did look good. Leclerc. And then Charles got provisional pole. And I didn't even get excited because I was like, well, obviously Norris or Piastri or Max is going to take it away. But no, it was happiness for once for Ferrari. We had Piastri with the slower Sector 1 and Sector 2. So he wasn't on his best lap. Norris had a slow Sector 1, but the best Sector 3. But his best Sector 3 as well. So I thought that could have pushed it, but also did not do it. Aston Martin didn't come out for the final laps, but they had already got quite a good position and they knew they probably weren't going to improve on that time anyway. Verstappen was on a good lap for him, for his timings that session, but it only brought him to P8, which I was very surprised about. And Leclerc got an insane pole, and his reaction was like everyone else's reaction. He just said, what? He was just confused, asking what, in disbelief that he actually got pole. He had a 1:15.372. Not even a very fast time, but he was just faster than everyone else. So that was something that always makes me happy. A Charles pole, a Charles win, how can that not make anyone happy? So our final qualifying order was Charles Leclerc in P1, Piastri P2, Norris, Russell, Alonso, Stroll, Bortoleto, Verstappen, Lawson, and then Hadjar. So we had Lawson beating Hadjar in qualifying session as well. I am really excited about Lawson recently, and he has really, really upped his game. And I said this last week. And if you listen every week, you're like, girl, literally come up with something new. You say the same thing every week, but it's relevant every week. At the start of the season, I was so harsh on Lawson. And I still don't think he should have got the Red Bull seat in the first place. I don't think he was ready. I think it should have went to Yuki, and Liam should have been left in RB to develop more. And then when he switched back from Red Bull to RB, when he got sacked, basically, his performance wasn't that great then either. And then I was a little concerned because if he can't make it to Red Bull, and he's not doing great performances in the Visa Cash app, then he doesn't have a hope in Formula 1 because no one is going to give him a chance. But he's really upped his game recently. He's bet Hadjar. He has had some really insane laps. I mean, we'll talk about his race when it comes to that, but a very good qualifying session to get into Q3 for Liam Lawson. And then on to the race, we had Tsunoda starting from the pit lane because he made changes to his car under park for main conditions. Not that much of a setback considering he was out in Q1 anyway, but to be fair, P16 I think he qualified, so it's still a 4-place drop. Not ideal. The track was cooler than it had been all weekend. There was a light breeze and apparently rain on the way, but we didn't actually see that coming in the end. So because of that, the medium and the hard tyres were the better tyres to start on. And I really didn't think I would see anyone start on softs, but we did see some people start on softs. We had Sainz, Hulk and Albon, and the softs weren't awful to start on, but they weren't any better than the mediums and hards, and obviously they wore way faster, so probably not the best strategy. I think obviously just in hopes of a safety car, maybe they would have worked a bit better. But even still, the timings weren't that much faster on the softs compared to the mediums. Lando had a rapid start actually. He had a great start while Lando had a poor start. He lost out to both Alonso and Russell, so he fell a couple of places. But he did make up his lost position to Alonso quite quickly with a good move, and Aston Martin did have pace, so it wasn't the easiest thing to do. Max had a nice start as well. I was quite hopeful about his race because he was making moves. He was making some good overtakes, but that just didn't. But strategy, I guess, played a more important role than that, and his race didn't really come to anything great in the end. It came up quite early that Bortoleto had a jump start, but that turned out to be Hulk with the jump starts. A very minor one, but still that got Hulk a 5-second penalty. And it came up, did you all see that it came up like the exclamation mark red box beside his name that says you have a penalty way before it came up on the screen to say that he had a penalty. I was like, I didn't understand what Hulk did because I still thought it was Bortoleto. But yes, it was not. They got that one wrong. Bortoleto was actually up to P6 though at the start. Bortoleto was actually up to P6 very early though in the race. Bortoleto was having an amazing race. The pit stops then started around lap 15. Max boxed, I think, lap 18 and Piastri on the same lap. Piastri was going for the undercut on Charles, and Charles pitted on lap 20. And then Charles pitted on lap 20. Russell also pitted on lap 20, but Oscar just didn't get those tyres heated up as much as he needed to for the undercut to actually work. So the undercut didn't work there. The overcut worked. And even while Charles was warming up his tyres, again, the lap after Piastri couldn't catch up with him there. So Charles was doing well to do that. Lando's tyres weren't going well from quite early on into the race, but he still wanted to go with the one stop, and he did. He did successfully carry out the one stop. So he was going to aim for around 40 laps on the hard tyres, which would be a lot to keep them going. He boxed around lap 32, a very good stop, 1.9, I think potentially drawing the fastest for the season, or maybe it is actually the fastest for the season. And he just drove the car off basically since then. He had a very good race, very clean race, and the speed was just there. Verstappen and Hamilton had a turn 4 incident where Hamilton went quite a bit wide. Now, that was to be investigated after the race because they obviously just needed to talk to the drivers. And as I'm filming this, nothing has come about that yet. Where did Max finish in the end? He finished P9, so even if he gets a penalty... He finished P9, but everyone behind him got lapped. Would it affect him if he got a penalty? Or would it be like a grid penalty for next week? Probably a grid penalty if he does get a penalty. I don't know. I don't know if they touched or not. I have no idea. What I thought happened, I thought, Lewis just moved wide himself to avoid contact, so, he would finish the race. But I don't know. Maybe there was contact. I honestly have no idea. I'm guessing if it was under investigation and they looked at it and decided it needed to be investigated after the session, that there was a touch, unless they couldn't tell if there was a touch there and they needed to ask Lewis. I don't know. It probably won't be a big penalty if it is penalty anyway. The second pit stops were happening around lap 41. Not too many laps after Lando actually boxed for the first time as well, so I think you could tell that Lando was probably going to be fine on his one-stop strategy from there. We had a DNF. Behrman was out. He was out with floor damage, so he had to return to the garage. And then McLaren made the decision that if there was a safety car, which luckily there wasn't, that Lando would box. So, the tyres were struggling, but not struggling enough that he would need to box. Because he would just lose out one place to Oscar, which I guess does make sense, especially Lando could get that place back on fresher tyres as well, so I wouldn't say Lando would have been too against that decision had it happened anyway. Russell did report light spots of rain, 6 laps to go, but didn't see anything come of that either. Could have been his sweat again. And then Charles was under investigation for moving under braking, which he did. He so clearly did, and he got a 5-second penalty for it. Tsunoda and Colapinto not having a good run of it recently. They were both at the back of the field and not much done from them. I mean, I know Yuki had the pit lane start, but whatever they changed really didn't make any difference at all. So definitely a painful race for them to go into the summer break from, at this point, Lawson was still holding off Max, still in front of Max, not even too much of a competition about it. We had Piastri then. Then for the last 4 laps, we had Piastri with DRS to Norris. I really thought he was going to get Norris, and Lando did some great driving to actually hold Oscar off. Russell was still like 20 seconds behind them at this point. So little mistakes they could afford to make, not mistakes that would end either the races or whatever, but they had a bit of time to play with. But I think Piastri was still playing it a bit more safe, obviously, because he would be dead. Because he would be killed by the team if he took out Lando or vice versa. Then some more investigations going on. Gasly and Sainz were investigated, and Gasly did get a penalty for that in the end. What did he get? 10 seconds? And while the two at the front were fighting, Russell was able to start to get the fastest laps, and he did come away with the fastest lap. No point for the fastest laps, remember? Stupid rule that they took away because of our boy. Hulk and Antonelli made up the most places this race. Actually, we had them both up 5, and Hulk obviously didn't have, and considering Hulk had a 5-second penalty as well, that wasn't bad. Antonelli too, he was the last one to finish in the points. Not the greatest race, especially considering George finished P3, but not a bad race anyway either. And then they were showing the graphic of the acceleration and the braking timings for Lando and Oscar, and they were like doing identical things. They were getting to the same speed on the corners. Like, they're so in tune with each other and in tune with the car, and they really are getting everything out of the car that you can tell. So strategy did play a big role in that, but also Oscar's laps weren't the cleanest either. He went wide and he just didn't keep it as clean as he could have. So I guess Lando rightfully kept the win and did a good job at doing that. And in the end, Lando did win the race by 6/10. So going along the straight, he got a bit more, because before that it was 2/10. A close one. McLaren's 200th win, very intense. I would have been ill if I was a McLaren team member watching that. It's always so fun to watch teammates battle, because you know, like, the drama if they crash. Not to bring up Daniel again, but do you remember Hungary, the Daniel and Max 2017 incident, when when Daniel waited for Max to come around again just to make a rude gesture at him? That's the type of rivalry that I really like to see. It's funny to look at in the past, but in the moments, it's annoying, because one of those is your driver. Alonso finishing an incredible P5, and after missing the free practice one, that was a really nice way to go into the summer break and to end his weekend, especially after the talk around the paddock. Oh, of course, Alonso is injured, he's 40... What age is he? 45, 46, 44, something like that. What age is Lewis? I don't know. But he proved that even in the Aston Martin, he got into top 5. Very impressive. And Bortoleto, P6 in the stake, again, really, really impressive. And then Lawson finishing ahead of Verstappen. That's a Racing Bulls finishing ahead of a Red Bull again, but this time the Red Bull being driven by Max Verstappen out of everyone, so very impressive. And by a bit as well, I think maybe by like 3 seconds or something. So no, they weren't fighting until the end. Lawson sort of had that. So a good race from Lawson. My driver of the day would have been probably Alonso or Bortoleto. George obviously having a really good race as well. Again, his races are sort of just silent, but still good. If there is an update on anything while I'm still filming, I will let you know. But until then, let's go back to Riddle of the Week. So the answer for this week's Final Chicane Brain Game Riddle was Michele Alboreto. So if you don't know who that is, let me tell you a little something. He was an Italian Formula 1 driver, best known for his time with Ferrari in the 1980s. He began his F1 career with Tyrrell in 1981, and he quickly gained attention by winning the 1982 Las Vegas Grand Prix and the 1983 Detroit Grand Prix. In 1984, he joined Ferrari, becoming the first Italian to race for the team in over a decade. His strongest season came in 1985 when he finished runner-up in the World Championship against Alain Prost. And despite strong performances, Ferrari's reliability issues, even happening back then, kept him from clinching the title. After leaving Ferrari in 1988, he raced for several teams, including La Russe, Footwork and Minardi, before retiring from Formula One in 1994. He continued racing in other series and achieved notable success, including a victory at the 1997 20 Hours of Le Mans with Joest Racing. Again, if I'm pronouncing any of these names wrong, just let me know how it's pronounced. But tragically, Alboreto died in a testing accident in 2001 while preparing for Le Mans. But he is remembered as a skilled and very well respected and dignified racer, and one of Italy's finest in Formula One. So it was Michele Alboreto. There's actually a whole documentary. If you just look up his name and documentary, you can watch it on YouTube for free. But yeah, he's an interesting character and an interesting driver, and definitely someone worth looking into further. Just to go over some of the post-race comments made by the driver, particularly starting with Lewis. He had a bit of a weird follow-up comment, basically suggesting that maybe Ferrari need to change their driver, referring to him. He was one of them who attempted the one stop in the race, but it just didn't work out for him, and he was stuck in a DRS train, finishing P12 in the end. Now, Lewis obviously had some comments to make on Saturday, and he was asked to clarify them after the race, and he basically said, when you have a feeling, you have a feeling. There's a lot going on in the background that's not great. So it's cryptic and it doesn't sound too great. It doesn't sound too hopeful. He said, I still love it. I still love racing, but that's what he said. But then obviously it sort of hints that there's something more going on in the background. Max also confirmed that him and Lewis didn't touch during that accident, so he wasn't sure why there's an investigation. And considering they didn't touch, I don't think actually that will come to anything. Now, Charles also had some angry radio messages, particularly sort of aimed at the team after the race, but he did sort of retract his comments, saying that from around lap 40, we had a problem with the chassis. So now I've had more details about it in the car, obviously. I had no idea what was going on. I mean, I had an idea, but it was the wrong idea because I thought it was something that was in our control. So he realised that not all of the problem, I would argue, was on Ferrari if they did actually have a problem with the car, but strategy's still not doing anything for Charles there. And that is mainly it for the post-race stuff. I'm sure a lot of new stuff will come out soon, but we can discuss that on TikTok and in the comments and wherever you want. Instagram, it doesn't matter to me. But now we have a little break from each other. So I will see you end of August. Netherlands, I think, is next. Oh, also, sorry for not doing the cooking challenge this week. I just didn't have time. I was flying home on that day, so I genuinely didn't have time. And those cooking challenges are expensive because usually I need to buy loads and loads of new stuff. So at least I got to save some money this weekend. But I will be back to doing it in the Netherlands, so let me know what you want me to cook. And something related to the area of the track, the province more of the track if possible. So I'll see you then. Bye.